Get out. James's voice was cold as he stood in our marble foyer, casually swirling whiskey in a crystal glass. Your things are already packed. I stared at the Louis Vuitton suitcases lined up by the door, the ones he'd bought me last Christmas when everything still seemed perfect. My hands trembled, but I kept my voice steady. So that's it? After 8 years of marriage, you're just throwing me out. He smirked, taking another sip. Come on, Emma. Let's not make this dramatic. We both know this marriage has served its purpose. Your inheritance helped build ClearTech into what it is today. Now that we're going public, I need someone more suitable by my side. Someone who understands the tech world. My name is Emma Chen, and at 34, I was watching my life crumble around me. 8 years ago, I'd married James believing in love and forever. He was brilliant but struggling, working on a startup he swore would change the world. When my parents died in a car accident 2 years into our marriage, leaving me their life savings and family business shares worth $3 million, I didn't hesitate to invest it all in his dream. You mean someone like Melissa? I asked, thinking of his 25-year-old head of marketing who'd been spending more and more time at our house lately. The way she looked at him during dinner parties, how they always seemed to be having late meetings. James's smile widened. Melissa understands vision. She gets what it takes to build something revolutionary. He gestured dismissively with his glass. You were great for the early days. The supportive wife, the generous investor. But ClearTech is worth $100 million now. We're playing in the big leagues. I looked around our mansion. The sweeping staircase, the chandelier that cost more than most cars. The art I carefully selected to make this place feel like home. All of it built with my family's money, my trust, my love. The board meets tomorrow to finalize the IPO, James continued, checking his Rolex. Another gift bought with my inheritance. Melissa and I need to prep. So if we could wrap this up. I walked to the suitcases, my heels clicking against the marble floor. Each step felt heavy with 6 years of memories. The dinner parties I'd hosted to help him network, the nights I'd stayed up listening to his ideas, the vacations we'd canceled because he needed to work. I believed in him completely, had been so proud to help build his dream. You know what's funny? I said, turning to face him. You think you've won, that you've played this perfectly. He raised an eyebrow, amused. Haven't I? ClearTech is about to go public. I'm about to become one of the youngest tech billionaires in the country. And you? He shrugged. You'll get whatever the prenup stipulates, which, if I remember correctly, isn't much. I smiled, thinking of everything he didn't know. The quiet moves I'd made over the past year as I watched him grow more distant, more arrogant. The careful planning that would turn his smug grin into shock. Good luck with the IPO, James, I said, grabbing my suitcases. I'm sure it'll be interesting. His confidence faltered for just a moment. What's that supposed to mean? You'll see. I walked out without looking back, the heavy door closing behind me with a final thud. What James didn't know, what he'd been too arrogant to even consider, was that I wasn't as naive as he thought. Growing up in a business family had taught me to always protect myself. While he was busy building his empire and courting Melissa, I'd been watching, learning, and preparing. The inheritance he used to build ClearTech? I had documentation for every penny, dated, notarized, and safely stored with my lawyer. The early company contracts, all carefully preserved, showing my role as more than just a silent investor. The long hours he claimed to be working, I had proof of much more interesting activities. But my real insurance policy was something far more valuable, something that would make tomorrow's board meeting very interesting indeed. I checked into the Four Seasons, a small indulgence I planned ahead for. As I unpacked, my phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Lauren. Are you okay? Did you do it? It's done, I replied. He kicked me out just like we expected. Melissa's already moving in. That smug bastard, she texted back. He has no idea what's coming, does he? I smiled, thinking of the documents safely stored in my laptop. Documents that would turn James's perfect plan upside down. No, I wrote. He doesn't. That night, I sat in my hotel room watching the city lights twinkle below. 6 years ago, James had been a struggling entrepreneur with big dreams. I believed in those dreams, had wanted to be part of building something meaningful. The $3 million from my parents had seemed like fate, a way to honor their memory by helping create something amazing. I remember the day I transferred the money to ClearTech's account. James had hugged me tight, promising we'd build an empire together. You and me against the world, he'd said. Partners in everything. Now here I was, kicked out of my own house so he could move in his girlfriend. The wife who funded his success discarded like yesterday's news. But James had made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated me. Growing up watching my father run his business, I'd learned that trust was good, but documentation was better. My phone buzzed again, this time with an email from my lawyer, Sandra. Everything's in place for tomorrow. Are you sure you want to do this? Once we move forward, there's no going back. I thought about James's smug smile as he dismissed me, about all the nights I'd spent alone while he was working late with Melissa, about how he thought he could use me and throw me away. Unsure, I replied, let's show them what I'm really worth. Tomorrow, James would learn that his perfect plan had one fatal flaw. Me, and I was done being underestimated. As I walked into ClearTech's gleaming headquarters the next morning, the security guard did a double take. Mrs. Chen. Mr. Wilson said, that I wouldn't be coming in anymore. I smiled, sliding my still valid ID card across the desk. He was mistaken about a lot of things, Tom. The elevator ride to the top floor felt surreal. How many times had I visited James here, bringing him lunch during late nights or attending company events? The modern art on the walls, the sleek furniture in the reception area, all of it chosen with my inheritance money. I could hear voices from the boardroom as I approached. James was mid-speech, his voice carrying that confident tone I'd once found so charming. Which is why this IPO will position ClearTech as the leading innovator in cloud security, our proprietary technology. I pushed open the door, and the room fell silent. 12 board members turned to stare at me, their expressions ranging from shock to discomfort. James stood at the head of the table, his presentation frozen on the screen behind him. Next to him, Melissa's perfectly made-up face paled. Emma. James recovered quickly, his smile tight. This is a private board meeting. You shouldn't be here. I took a seat at the far end of the table, placing my laptop in front of me. Actually, I have every right to be here. As a major stakeholder in ClearTech, I think the board should hear what I have to say before voting on the IPO. One of the board members, an older man named Richard, leaned forward. Mrs. Wilson, we were under the impression that you had no official role in the company. It's Ms. Chen. I corrected him, opening my laptop, and that impression was incorrect. In fact, there's quite a lot about ClearTech that needs clarification. James's facade cracked slightly. Emma, don't do this. Whatever you're thinking. I connected my laptop to the presentation screen, and the room gasped. There on display was the original investment agreement, $3 million transferred from my personal account to start ClearTech, with clear terms about my role as a founding investor. As you can see, I said calmly, my investment wasn't just a wife supporting her husband. It was a formal business arrangement with specific conditions about my involvement in major company decisions, like, say, an IPO. The board members shifted uncomfortably, several of them shooting questioning looks at James. He had always portrayed ClearTech as his sole creation, conveniently leaving out the fact that his wife's inheritance had made it all possible. That was years ago, James said dismissively. The company has grown far beyond that initial investment. True, I nodded, clicking to the next slide, which is why I found it interesting that you've been systematically erasing my contributions from company records. These are the original documents, and these, I split screen to show altered versions, are what you submitted to the SEC for the IPO filing. The room erupted in murmurs. Document falsification in an IPO filing was serious, the kind of thing that could derail the entire process and trigger investigations. This is ridiculous, Melissa spoke up, her hand possessively on James's arm. You're just bitter because my husband used my family's money to build this company, then tried to push me out when he thought he didn't need me anymore. I interrupted. No, Melissa, I'm not bitter. I'm just well prepared. I clicked to the next slide, and James's face went ash white. There on the screen were bank statements showing systematic fund diversions from ClearTech's accounts to offshore holdings. Millions of dollars moved quietly over the past year. Would anyone like to explain these transactions? I asked innocently. Because I'm very curious about why company funds were being moved to accounts in the Cayman Islands right before the IPO announcement. Richard, the board member who'd spoken earlier, stood up abruptly. Mr. Wilson, is this accurate? James tugged at his collar, his cold demeanor cracking. These are complex financial arrangements for tax purposes, completely standard. Standard? I raised an eyebrow. Is that what you told Melissa when you promised her shares from these accounts? When you planned to cash out together after the IPO? Melissa jumped up, her chair scraping against the floor. How did you? No. I finished for her. Let's just say you should be more careful about what you discuss over company email, especially when the company's security system was partly funded by the person you're planning to betray. The boardroom erupted into chaos. Several members were on their phones, presumably calling their lawyers. Others were demanding immediate explanations from James, who stood there looking like his perfect world was crumbling around him. This is a simple choice, I said, raising my voice above the commotion. Either we postpone the IPO and restructure the company leadership to reflect its true ownership, or I take this evidence to the SEC. Your call. James stormed around the table toward me, his face contorted with rage. You manipulative bitch, he hissed under his breath. You're trying to destroy everything I built. No, James, I said quietly, meeting his gaze. I'm taking back what's mine. What we built together, before you decided to throw me away. The board quickly called for an emergency recess. As people filed out of the room, many of them already on their phones with crisis managers and lawyers, I packed up my laptop calmly. Everything I'd shown them was just the tip of the iceberg. I had more evidence, more proof of James's deceptions, safely backed up and ready to deploy if needed. Richard, the senior board member, approached me as I stood to leave. Ms. Chen, I think we need to have a longer conversation about your role in ClearTech. Perhaps over lunch? I smiled, shouldering my bag. I'd like that. I have quite a few ideas about the company's future. As I walked out, I caught a glimpse of James and Melissa in heated discussion, their perfect plan falling apart around them. He looked up as I passed, and for the first time since I'd known him, I saw fear in his eyes. This was just the beginning. James had thought he could discard me without consequences, but he was about to learn just how expensive that mistake would be. The weeks following the board meeting were a whirlwind of legal negotiations, emergency board sessions, and company restructuring. I watched from my temporary office on the 19th floor, not quite the penthouse suite where James still sat, but close enough to keep an eye on things. The IPO had been postponed indefinitely. After my revelations, the board wasn't taking any chances. They'd hired independent auditors to go through every transaction, every document, every decision made in the past 6 years. What they found made my evidence look tame in comparison. They've uncovered at least $12 million in questionable transactions, Sandra, my lawyer, told me one morning as we reviewed the latest findings. James wasn't just planning to cash out with Melissa. He was setting up a parallel company structure. He was going to use the IPO money to start fresh, leaving ClearTech as an empty shell. I sipped my coffee, looking out over the city skyline. And Melissa? Any word from her legal team? Sandra smirked. She's singing like a canary, turned over everything. Emails, texts, recorded conversations. Apparently, she's not as loyal to James now that his perfect plan has fallen apart. I wasn't surprised. Melissa had always been ambitious, but her loyalty extended only as far as her own interests. Once she realized James couldn't deliver the wealthy future he promised, she'd switched sides quickly. The press had been having a field day with the story. Tech CEO's IPO dreams crumble amid fraud allegations, read one headline. ClearTech founder's wife exposes million-dollar deception, screamed another. James' reputation in the tech world, once golden, was now thoroughly tarnished. But I wasn't interested in revenge, I wanted justice. The board had been surprisingly receptive to my proposals for restructuring the company. With James's credibility destroyed and the threat of SEC investigations looming, they were eager to find a stable path forward. The board meeting's in an hour, Sandra reminded me, gathering her papers. Are you ready? I nodded, straightening my blazer. More than ready. The boardroom looked different now. The same sleek table, the same floor-to-ceiling windows. But the energy had changed. James sat at the far end, his usual confidence replaced by barely contained anger. His lawyer whispered something in his ear as I took my seat. Richard called the meeting to order. As you all know, we're here to finalize the leadership restructuring of ClearTech. Following the independent audit and extensive legal review, the board has prepared a resolution. I kept my expression neutral as he read through the terms. James would step down as CEO, though he retained a minority stake in the company. The offshore accounts would be frozen and investigated. And most importantly, I would be installed as executive chairperson, with final say over all major company decisions. This is insane, James burst out, standing up. You're giving her control of my company? Our company, I corrected him quietly, built with my family's money, my support, and my trust. Money you tried to steal, support you abused, and trust you betrayed. The board members shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke up to defend James. They'd all seen the evidence, all realized how close they'd come to being implicated in his schemes. The resolution is fair, Richard said firmly. Ms. Chen's investment and early involvement were instrumental in building ClearTech. Her recent actions protected not just her interests, but those of every shareholder and employee. The vote was quick and decisive. 10 in favor, 2 abstaining, none opposed. Just like that, control of ClearTech passed to me. As people filed out of the room, James approached me, his face dark with fury. Congratulations, he spat. You've destroyed everything I worked for. I stood up slowly, gathering my things. No, James, I saved what we built together. You're the one who tried to destroy it with greed and lies. You think you can run this company, he sneered. You don't know the first thing about tech. I know about loyalty, I replied. About building trust and keeping it. The technology might be complex, but the principles of good business are simple, something my father taught me long ago. I walked to the door, then turned back for one last look at the man I'd once loved so completely. The night was bitter cold as I stood on our front porch, my thin jacket doing little to shield me from the harsh December wind. My father's words still rang in my ears, each syllable sharp as ice. Get out, he had said, his voice trembling with rage. You're no daughter of mine. My name is Amanda Chen, and at 17, I became everything my traditional Chinese-American parents feared. Pregnant, unmarried, and according to them, a disgrace to the family name. I watched through blurry eyes as my mother lingered by the window, her face a mask of disappointment before she turned away, letting the curtain fall. The message was clear. I was alone now. The few possessions I'd managed to grab were stuffed into my school backpack. Some clothes, my phone charger, and the positive pregnancy test that had shattered my family just hours ago. My hand instinctively went to my still flat stomach, protecting the life growing inside even as my own world crumbled around me. Jason, my boyfriend and the baby's father, had disappeared the moment I told him. No calls, no texts, nothing. Just radio silence and blocked social media accounts. The coward's way out. I made my way down the familiar street where I'd grown up, past the maple tree I used to climb and the garden my mother tended so carefully. Each step felt like leaving another piece of myself behind. The streetlights cast long shadows as tears froze on my cheeks. Mrs. Rodriguez, our elderly neighbor, was the one who found me hours later, huddled on a park bench trying to stay warm. She had always been kind to me, sneaking me extra cookies when I was younger and teaching me Spanish phrases while she gardened. Oh, mi niña, she whispered when I told her everything through chattering teeth. Come inside before you freeze. Her small apartment was warm and smelled like cinnamon tea. She didn't judge or lecture, just listened as I poured out my fears between sobs. How could I raise a baby? Where would I live? What about school? The questions seemed endless. One day at a time, she said firmly, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. First, you need a safe place to sleep. You'll stay here tonight, and tomorrow we'll figure out the next step. That night, curled up on Mrs. Rodriguez's lumpy couch, I dreamed of my mother. In the dream, she was in her garden, carefully pruning her beloved roses. But as I watched, the flowers withered and died under her touch, crumbling to dust. I woke up crying. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Mrs. Rodriguez helped me enroll in a program for pregnant teens, where I could continue my education while getting support and prenatal care. I found a job at a local diner, working the morning shift before classes. The hours were long and my feet ached constantly, but every dollar I earned went into a savings account for my baby. My parents never called. I would see my mother sometimes at the grocery store, but she would turn down another aisle, pretending not to notice me. My father's car would speed up if he passed me walking to work. It was like I had become a ghost in my own hometown, invisible to the people who had raised me. The other girls in my program became my lifeline. We shared our stories, our fears, and our dreams over lukewarm cafeteria food. Many of them had similar tales. Families who couldn't accept their choices, boyfriends who vanished, futures that seemed to shrink with each passing day. But something unexpected happened as my belly grew. I found strength I didn't know I had. Each kick from my baby reminded me that I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I studied harder than ever, determined to graduate despite my circumstances. The diner manager noticed my work ethic and gave me more responsibilities, along with a small raise. When I felt my baby move for the first time, I was alone in my tiny rented room, studying for a chemistry test. The flutter was so faint I almost missed it, like butterfly wings against my skin. I pressed my hand to the spot, tears flowing freely as I whispered, "Hello, little one. I'm your mom." It was a girl. The ultrasound technician pointed out her tiny features on the grainy screen, her spine, her heart, her perfect little profile. I asked for extra printouts, secretly hoping to share them with my parents. They sat in my bag for weeks before I finally threw them away, accepting that some bridges couldn't be rebuilt. Mrs. Rodriguez helped me prepare for the baby's arrival, teaching me to knit tiny hats and booties. Her arthritis made her movements slow, but her stories kept me company as we worked. She told me about raising her own children as an immigrant, about the challenges she faced and overcame. "Life never gives you more than you can handle," she would say, her needles clicking steadily, "even when it feels impossible." The contractions started during my final exam of senior year. I gritted my teeth through the pain, determined to finish the test before heading to the hospital. My water broke in the taxi, and 12 hours later, I held my daughter for the first time. Lely Marie Chen came into the world at 6:43 a.m. on a Tuesday, weighing 7 pounds 2 ounces. She had a full head of dark hair and my mother's eyes. As I counted her tiny fingers and toes, memorizing every detail of her perfect face, I made her a promise. "You will never doubt that you're loved," I whispered. Never. Mrs. Rodriguez was my only visitor in the hospital. She brought homemade tamales and cooed over Lily in rapid Spanish. The nurses gave me sympathetic looks when no other family showed up, but I barely noticed. My whole world had narrowed to this small bundle in my arms. Graduation day fell 2 weeks after Lily's birth. I walked across the stage to receive my diploma with her strapped to my chest in a baby carrier, her weight a reminder of everything I fought for. There was no one in the audience cheering for me, but the other girls from my program whooped and hollered enough to make up for it. That summer passed in a haze of sleepless nights and endless diaper changes. I moved into a tiny studio apartment barely big enough for a bed and Lily's crib. But it was ours, paid for with my own money. The walls were thin and the neighborhood wasn't great, but it was home. Every morning, I would wake before dawn to feed Lily before dropping her at the daycare center next to the diner. The owner, Maria, had a soft spot for young mothers and gave me a discount on childcare. I worked double shifts whenever I could, saving every extra penny for our future. Sometimes, on my walks home, I would pass my parents' house. The lights would be on, shadows moving behind the curtains, life continuing as if I had never existed. Once, I saw my mother in the garden, and for a moment our eyes met. She looked older, tired. But before I could raise my hand to wave, she turned away, just like that night on the porch. I cried myself to sleep that night, Lily's soft breathing the only sound in our tiny apartment. But in the morning, I got up, put on my uniform, and kept going, because that's what mothers do. The years would pass, each one bringing new challenges and triumphs. But that first year, the year I lost my family but found myself, that was the hardest. And as I rocked my daughter to sleep each night, I wondered if my mother ever thought of us, if she missed the granddaughter she'd never met. I had no way of knowing then that 15 years would pass before I heard my mother's voice again, that when the phone finally rang, everything would change. 15 years can change a lot. I had worked my way up from waitress to restaurant manager, eventually saving enough to open my own small cafe. Lily had grown from that tiny baby into a bright, confident teenager who filled our home with laughter and music. The night the call came, I was going over the cafe's monthly expenses while Lily practiced violin in her room. The unknown number flashing on my phone made me hesitate before answering. "Amanda." The voice was older, more fragile than I remembered, but unmistakably my mother's. My hand tightened around the phone as memories flooded back. That cold December night, the turnbacks, the years of silence. Your father is dying, she said, her voice cracking. Cancer. The doctors say he has weeks, maybe days. He's asking for you and Lily. I sat there stunned as she continued. I know we don't deserve to ask anything of you, but please, he wants to meet his granddaughter before. She trailed off, leaving the sentence unfinished. The violin music from Lily's room stopped, and I heard her footsteps in the hallway. Mom, who's on the phone? I covered the receiver with my hand. Just a work call, sweetie. Keep practicing. My mother must have heard her voice because she made a small, choked sound. She sounds lovely. She is, I said firmly, no thanks to you or Dad. The silence that followed was heavy with 15 years of unspoken words. Finally, my mother spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. I know, I was wrong, Amanda. So terribly wrong. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. How many nights had I dreamed of hearing those words? How many times had I imagined this moment of acknowledgement? But now that it was here, I felt nothing but a deep, aching exhaustion. I need time to think, I said. And I need to talk to Lily. This isn't just about me anymore. Of course, my mother replied quickly. Just, please don't wait too long. After hanging up, I sat at the kitchen table, my mind racing. The cafe's paperwork lay forgotten as memories crashed over me like waves. The day I told them I was pregnant. The look of disgust on my father's face. My mother's silence, perhaps more painful than his rage. Lily appeared in the doorway, violin still in hand. At 15, she looked so much like I had at her age. The same dark eyes, the same stubborn chin. But where I had been uncertain, she carried herself with quiet confidence. That wasn't a work call, was it? She asked, setting her violin down. You're crying. I touched my cheek, surprised to find it wet. No, it wasn't. Come sit down, sweetheart. There's something we need to talk about. She listened quietly as I told her about my parents, about that night 15 years ago, about all the things I'd never had the courage to share before. Her face remained thoughtful, processing each detail with a maturity that made my heart ache. So my grandfather is dying, she said when I finished, and he wants to meet me. I nodded, watching her carefully. Yes, but it's completely your choice. We don't owe them anything. Lily was quiet for a long moment, absently plucking at a loose thread on her sleeve. I want to go, she said finally. Not for them, but for you. You deserve closure, Mom. I pulled her into a tight hug, marveling at how wise my daughter had become. When did you get so smart? She grinned against my shoulder. Must be all those books you make me read. The next morning, I called my mother back. Her answer was immediate, as if she'd been sitting by the phone waiting. We'll come, I said, keeping my voice steady. Tomorrow afternoon, but I have conditions. Anything, she breathed. First, this is about Lily. If Dad says one word, one single word, to make her feel unwelcome or unwanted, we leave. Second, I won't pretend the past didn't happen. No swept under the rug family reunion. And third, I took a deep breath. You need to hear our story. All of it. Everything you missed while you were pretending we didn't exist. There was a pause, then a soft, yes, of course. I spent that night going through old photos. Lily's first steps, her first day of school, dance recitals, violin concerts, 15 years of memories they had chosen to miss. Each picture was a reminder of how much we'd accomplished on our own, but also of how much they had lost. Mrs. Rodriguez had passed away 5 years ago, but I still had the first baby hat she'd knitted for Lily. I packed it with the photos, a tangible piece of the woman who had been more family to us than our own blood. The drive to my parents' house the next day felt surreal. The neighborhood hadn't changed much. Same neat lawns, same trimmed hedges. My mother's roses still bloomed in the front garden, though they looked a bit wild now, less carefully tended. Lily squeezed my hand as we walked up the familiar path to the front door. Ready? She asked. I looked at my beautiful, strong daughter and felt a surge of pride. Ready. The door opened before we could knock. My mother stood there, smaller than I remembered, her hair now more gray than black. Her hands trembled as she reached toward me, then dropped to her sides. Amanda, she whispered. You came. Her eyes moved to Lily, widening slightly. I saw the recognition there, the sharp intake of breath as she noticed all the ways my daughter resembled her younger self. "Would you like to come in?" she asked, stepping aside. I nodded, guiding Lily forward with a hand on her back. As we crossed the threshold, I couldn't help but remember the last time I'd walked through this door, young, scared, and alone. But this time was different. This time, I wasn't that helpless teenager anymore. And this time, I wasn't alone. The inside of my childhood home felt smaller than I remembered. Family photos still lined the hallway walls, but they stopped abruptly at my senior year. The last ones taken before everything fell apart. It was like time had frozen in this house, preserving the moment just before their perfect family shattered. My father was in the living room, propped up in a hospital bed that seemed out of place among the familiar furniture. The strong, imposing man who had thrown me out 15 years ago was gone, replaced by someone frail and diminished. His eyes, though, were the same, dark and intense as they fixed on Lily. "So," he said, his voice rough, "this is my granddaughter." Lily stepped forward, her chin lifted slightly. "I'm Lily," she said clearly. "It's nice to meet you, though I wish it hadn't taken so long." I saw my father flinch at her words, but a ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Direct, like your mother," he said. "Please sit down. Both of you." My mother hurried to arrange chairs, her movements nervous and jerky. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken words. Finally, my father spoke again. "I owe you both an apology," he said, "though I know it's far too late." 15 years too late, I agreed, my voice steady. "Do you know what it was like, being 17, pregnant and homeless in winter? Having to rely on the kindness of neighbors because my own parents threw me away." My mother made a small, pained sound. "Amanda, we were trying to." "To what?" I cut her off. "To protect the family name. To teach me a lesson." "Well, congratulations." The lesson I learned was that I could never count on either of you. I pulled out the stack of photos I'd brought, spreading them across the bed. "This is what you missed. Lily's first steps. Her first day of kindergarten. Every Christmas, every birthday, every milestone you chose not to be part of." They leaned forward, hungry for these glimpses of the life they'd ignored. My mother's hand trembled as she touched a photo of Lily in her first ballet costume. "You look just like your mother did at that age," she whispered to Lily. "I wouldn't now," Lily replied quietly. "I don't have any pictures of Mom from back then." The silence that followed was deafening. My father picked up a photo of Lily's elementary school graduation, where she'd won the Academic Achievement Award. "You did well with her," he said finally. "Better than we did with you." "I did everything you said I couldn't," I said. "Finished high school, built a career, raised an amazing daughter. All without your help or approval. And I own my own business now," I continued. "The cafe on Maple Street, that's mine. I worked my way up from waitress to owner. Funny how the daughter you were so ashamed of turned out to be successful after all." My father's face crumpled, and for the first time in my life, I saw tears in his eyes. "I was wrong," he said, his voice breaking. "So terribly wrong. My pride, my stupid, stubborn pride cost me my daughter and my granddaughter." "Yes, it did," I agreed. "But that's not why we're here today. We're here because Lily deserves to know where she comes from, even if that history isn't pretty. And because I hesitated, then continued, because despite everything, you're still my parents." My mother reached for my hand, and this time, I let her take it. Her fingers were cold and shaking. "Can you ever forgive us?" she asked. I looked at Lily, who had been watching this exchange with quiet intensity. "That depends," I said. "Are you ready to be real grandparents? To show up for recitals, to remember birthdays, to be there when we need you? Because if this is just about easing your conscience before Dad dies, then no, I won't put Lily through that." "I don't have much time left," my father said softly, "what your mother does. And I've made her promise to do better, to be there in all the ways we should have been before." Lily stood up suddenly. "I have a violin competition next week," she announced. "First chair in the youth symphony. Will you come, grandmother?" My mother's face lit up even as fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, of course." Over the next few weeks, as my father's condition deteriorated, we began the slow, careful work of rebuilding bridges. It wasn't easy. There were moments of tension, of old hurts resurfaces, of harsh words that needed to be said. But there were also moments of healing. My mother came to the cafe, proudly telling customers that her daughter was the owner. She attended Lily's violin competition, beaming from the audience. She even helped us plant a small herb garden behind the cafe, teaching Lily the gardening skills I'd never let her teach me. My father held on long enough to see Lily perform a private violin concert in his room, her music filling the house with something that felt like forgiveness. He died peacefully the next day, holding both our hands. At the funeral, I stood between my mother and daughter, thinking about the long, twisted path that had led us here. The years of pain and silence, the strength I'd found in solitude, the daughter who had taught me more about love and resilience than my parents ever had. What happens now? Lily asked later as we sat in our apartment above the cafe. I looked at my mother, who had come home with us, who was learning to be the grandmother she should have been all along. Now, I said, we write a new story, together. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the 17-year-old girl standing alone in the cold, thinking her life was over. I wish I could tell her that she was stronger than she knew, that she would build a beautiful life from the ashes of what was lost. But mostly, I wish I could tell her that sometimes the hardest paths lead to the most meaningful destinations. That forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, but it can mean finding peace. And that love, even when it seems completely broken, has a way of coming full circle. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Lunch tomorrow? I'd love to hear more about your high school years with Lily. I smiled as I typed back, yes, there's so much to tell. Because that's the thing about family, sometimes you have to lose it to find it again. Sometimes you have to break apart completely before you can rebuild something stronger. And sometimes, just sometimes, 15 years isn't too long to wait for a second chance. I always knew I was adopted. My father, James Richardson, never hid that fact from me. What my sister Catherine didn't know was that being adopted wasn't the only secret in our family. I'm Emma Chin, and at 32, I became the CEO of Richardson Global Enterprises, a fact that sent my sister into a very public meltdown. But let me start from the beginning. Dad adopted me when I was 6 after my biological parents died in a car accident in Hong Kong. He was there closing a business deal and visited the orphanage as part of his charitable works. Something about the quiet Asian girl reading advanced mathematics books in the corner caught his attention. 3 months later, I had a new home, a new sister, and a father who saw something in me that would change both our lives. Catherine, 2 years older than me, never accepted my presence. Where Dad saw potential, she saw competition. While I was diving into business books and learning about investments, she was focused on being the perfect socialite, the natural heir to the Richardson name. Blood will always matter more than paper, she'd say when Dad wasn't around. What none of them knew was that Dad had been preparing me to take over his company since I was 12. Those weren't just casual conversations about business over breakfast. They were carefully planned lessons. The summer internships weren't just to keep me busy. They were training grounds. By the time I finished my MBA, I knew every aspect of Richardson Global Enterprises intimately. Dad kept my training secret, not out of shame, but strategy. The business world is like a chess game, Emma, he'd tell me. The best moves are the ones your opponents don't see coming. Catherine married Trevor Williams, heir to a banking fortune, in what Society pages called the merger of the decade. The fact that Trevor's bank was secretly struggling under bad investments wasn't public knowledge yet. But Dad and I knew. We'd been quietly buying up their debt through shell companies for months. When Dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, he called me to his study one night. "It's time," he said, handing me a thick envelope. "Everything's prepared. Just remember what I taught you. Patience is the deadliest weapon in business." He died 3 weeks later. The funeral was exactly as Catherine wanted it, lavish, public, and designed to emphasize her position as the grieving daughter. I sat quietly in the back, as she'd instructed. "No need to confuse people about your place in the family," she'd said with a cold smile. After the service, during the reception at our family estate, Catherine made her move. She clinked her glass for attention, her black designer dress perfectly coordinating with her crocodile tears. "I want to thank everyone for coming to honor my father," she began, emphasizing the "my." Family meant everything to him, and as his only true child, I know he'd want us to be honest today. She turned to me, her smile razor sharp. "Emma, dear, I think it's time we stopped pretending. You were a charity case, a tax write-off Dad's accountant suggested. You're not real family, and it's time for you to go." The room fell silent. 200 of New York's elite waited for my response. Trevor smirked beside his wife, probably already spending the inheritance in his head. I stood slowly, straightened my simple black dress, and smiled. Of course, Catherine. You're right, we should stop pretending. I walked to the door, then turned back. See you at the will reading. Don't bother, she called after me. Dad's lawyers already confirmed everything goes to his real heir. I just smiled again. We'll see. 2 days later, in the Richardson Global Enterprises main conference room, Catherine's perfect world imploded. This is the last will and testament of James Patrick Richardson, the lawyer began. Catherine sat at the head of the table, already holding a pen to sign the transfer papers. To my daughter Catherine, the lawyer read, I leave the following. Your trust fund will continue untouched, providing you the same monthly allowance you currently receive. Catherine's smile faltered. That's it. Where's the rest? To my daughter Emma, the lawyer continued, I leave controlling interest in Richardson Global Enterprises, all associated companies, properties, and assets, effective immediately. The pen fell from Catherine's hand. That's impossible. She's not even a Richardson. Actually, I spoke for the first time. I am. Dad legally changed my name years ago, and I've been serving as the company's shadow CEO for the past 5 years. No, Catherine whispered. No. Security, I pressed the intercom button. Please escort Ms. Williams out of the building. Her access has been revoked. As security approached, Catherine knocked over her chair. You can't do this. I'm his real daughter. Being real family, I said quietly, isn't about blood, Catherine. It's about trust, loyalty, and vision. Dad understood that. I'm sorry you never did. I'll fight this, she screamed as security led her out. You'll never get away with stealing my birthright. I sat down in the CEO's chair, my chair. Actually, I already have. The real war, I knew, was just beginning. But Dad had taught me well, and I had plans Catherine couldn't even imagine. As her screams echoed down the hallway, I opened my laptop and began the changes that would reshape the Richardson empire, starting with the Williams family bank. Catherine's meltdown hit social media before she even reached her car. Someone in the conference room had recorded her screaming about her fake sister stealing her birthright, and the video spread like wildfire. Within hours, #Richardson drama was trending, with people divided between supporting the rightful blood heir and the secret CEO sister. I watched it unfold from Dad's old office, my office now, while signing the papers that would begin Catherine's financial ruin. She'd made her choice at the funeral. Now she'd learned why Dad had always said I was the better strategist. Her first move came the next morning, a lawsuit challenging the will, claiming I'd manipulated our father during his illness. Her lawyers filed emergency papers to freeze the company's assets. I'd been expecting this. In fact, I counted on it. Release the documents, I instructed my legal team. Within hours, every major news outlet received copies of my official adoption papers. My legal name changed to Emma Richardson Chin, and most devastatingly, video recordings of Dad explaining his succession choice. He'd made them during his last months, knowing Catherine would challenge the will. I choose Emma, he said in the video, looking directly at the camera, not because Catherine is inadequate, but because Emma is exceptional. She's been running this company in shadow for 5 years, turning record profits while her sister was planning charity galas. Blood doesn't make a CEO, vision does. Catherine's lawsuit was dismissed within days. But I wasn't done. Remember those shell companies buying up Williams' bank debt? The day after Catherine's lawsuit failed, Richardson Global called in all the loans. Trevor's family bank, already struggling, faced immediate bankruptcy. Catherine showed up at my office, her designer outfit slightly wrinkled. A telling detail for someone who'd never had a hair out of place. You vindictive bitch, she spat. You're destroying Trevor's family. I looked up from my computer. Actually, you did that when you kicked me out of Dad's funeral. Actions have consequences, Catherine. Dad taught us that, remember? Well, one of us was paying attention. He was my father. He was our father. But while you were playing society princess, I was learning to run his empire. Did you really think those summer internships were just to keep me busy? That all those breakfast meetings were just casual conversations? Her face paled. Those were training sessions. Every single one. Dad knew who he wanted as his successor by the time I was 12. The adoption, the name change, the secret training. It was all part of his plan. You could have been part of it too, if you'd ever shown any interest in anything beyond your trust fund. I'll tell everyone, she threatened, about how you manipulated him, turned him against his real daughter. Go ahead, I interrupted, turning my laptop to show her the screen. These are the records of every transaction from your trust fund for the past 5 years. The private shopping sprees disguised as charity donations. The business meetings that were actually spa days. Oh, and let's not forget the interesting transfers to Trevor's personal account. The ones that started right after you discovered his bank was failing. She sank into a chair. How did you? I told you. I've been running this company for 5 years. Did you think I wouldn't monitor the trust funds? Dad knew about all of it. He just wanted to see if he'd ever come clean. The next phase of my plan unfolded over the following weeks. As Williams Bank collapsed, Richardson Global swooped in to save it, at the cost of Trevor's family losing control. Catherine and Trevor were forced to sell their mansion, their cars, their vacation homes. Their society friends disappeared as quickly as their wealth. Funny how that happens. But the real twist came during the shareholders' meeting 3 months later. As I presented the company's record profits under my official leadership, Catherine made one last desperate play. She burst into the meeting, waving papers. I have proof, she screamed. Proof that she's been manipulating company funds. Security moved to remove her, but I held up my hand. Let her speak. The documents she'd brought were actually plans I'd leaked through a carefully chosen channel, plans showing massive transfers of company funds. What Catherine hadn't realized was that they were records of her own embezzlement, done through proxy accounts she thought were untraceable. These transfers, she announced triumphantly, prove that Emma has been stealing from the company. Interesting, I replied calmly, because those transfers align perfectly with deposits made to these accounts. I projected a new set of documents on the screen. Accounts registered to Catherine Williams and Trevor Williams. The room erupted in chaos. Catherine's face went from triumphant to horrified as she realized she'd just publicly implicated herself in financial fraud. He set me up, she whispered. No, Catherine, you set yourself up. I just made sure everyone could see it. The SEC investigation was brief but thorough. Catherine and Trevor were indicted on multiple counts of financial fraud. Their remaining assets were frozen. The trust fund, their last financial lifeline, was suspended pending criminal investigation. Dad would have appreciated the symmetry. The sister who'd relied on blood ties losing everything to the sister who learned strategy. 1 year later, I sat in my office reviewing the latest acquisition proposals. Richardson Global had doubled in size under my leadership, expanding into new markets while maintaining the ethical business practices Dad had valued. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Catherine had taken a plea deal. 2 years in a minimum security prison, followed by 5 years of probation. Trevor had fled to a non-extradition country, leaving her to face the charges alone. I picked up the photo on my desk. Dad and me at my college graduation, both of us smiling, sharing a secret the world wouldn't understand for years. You were right, Dad, I whispered. Patience is the deadliest weapon. A notification popped up on my screen. Catherine's auction house was selling her remaining possessions to pay legal fees. Among the items, a family photo album listed as Richardson Family Memories. I bought it anonymously and had it delivered to her prison cell with a note. Blood isn't what makes a family. Trust is. You never understood the difference. The media eventually moved on to other scandals, other family dramas. Richardson Global continued to thrive, its adopted CEO becoming known for both business acumen and philanthropic work, particularly supporting adoption agencies and educational programs for orphan children. Every year, on Dad's birthday, I visit his grave alone. I leave 2 things, fresh flowers and a copy of the company's annual report. Last year, I added a 3rd item, a newspaper clipping about Catherine's sentence with a simple note. You taught me well, Dad. The best moves really are the ones they never see coming. Catherine gets out of prison next year. Her trust fund is gone. Her society friends have forgotten her. And her husband is sipping cocktails somewhere without an extradition treaty. Me? I'm in Dad's old office, my office, planning the company's next expansion. There's a new photo on my desk now, next to the graduation picture. Me with a group of business students I mentor. All of them adopted. All of them learning what Dad taught me. That family isn't about blood. It's about choice. And sometimes the family you choose is better than the family you're born into. Just ask Catherine. I'm sure she has plenty of time to think about that now.